Hi, it's Amanda again, and I've decided to name this series Becoming a Former Binge Eater, Becoming a Former Emotionaleater, and Becoming a Former Chronic Overeater, because all of those things are what I've been doing to cope and deal with the messiness of my life. All three of those things, binge eating, emotional eating, and chronic overeating, just feeling stuffed, are all things that cause me great discomfort, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I have a lot of shame about them. So I'm not into that. Anyway, over the weekend, I legit had a binge where I went to the store and I bought a bunch of like candies and sugary treats because I had been trying to stop eating sugar altogether as a way of, I don't know, losing weight and being healthy. And that just really showed me like I cannot restrict. I can't say I'll never do this again. I can't say that. I can't do that. It is unrealistic. My attempts to control or contain how I am around food are, the binge eating cycle is spurred on either physiologically from restriction or psychologically from restriction. I've been doing this long enough, and I've come to this realization before that I can't restrict, and yet I keep doing it. It took me a few days. I had like one binge, and then I was just kind of emotionally and overeating sugary things. And I was in a really sour mood, which is hard when you have a partner who loves you and is like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm just in a shitty mood for days. It was my father's birthday, and I was just kind of like, I don't want to be here. And that's just not true. I did want to spend time with my father, but I was so caught up in my own self. One takeaway from this was I can't restrict and say no more of this item. And also I realized that I have been approaching stopping binge eating, emotional eating, and chronic overeating as if I decide it and then I never have a problem again. So each time I have an urge, or each time I have a binge, or each time I overeat, it's a total failure and I have to start all over again. I've got this extreme black and white thinking that it's either success or failure. And I've been approaching stopping this like I have to do it all at once, and it's either success or failure. And two, that success means I never have an urge, that I never have a craving, that I never feel uncomfortable, that I never have to figure out what to do to not indulge and not shame myself for it. I just realized that there was this wacky way of thinking. So it inspired me to reflect on some of the things that I've already successfully changed, habits that I have stopped in my life. And there've been a number of them, but I just kind of reflected on a couple. One of them was many, many years ago when I was in my 20s. I went on my first diet. And I was very successful with it. I lost a lot of weight, and I was going to the gym, and I was lifting weights, and I looked good. I remember one day I bought a package of cookies. Not even a full package, but an individual package. It was an individual sized portion of cookies. And I was like, that's it. And I was at a loss, and I thought that this was absolute failure. And I started the habit of purging, binging and purging. And I can't remember, because this is over 20 years ago. So I can't remember how long I did this. In my memory, it's just months, but I have a feeling it was at least a year of using purging as a way of excusing binges. And I can't exactly remember how I stopped it. I just remember having so much shame and disgust with myself. And there was a moment where I had a physical sensation that I needed to do this or else. It wasn't just an idea, but it was a compulsion, almost like smoking cigarettes, like this addictive need, that really scared me. I think it scared me enough that I was like, I gotta stop this however I do. And I can't remember exactly what I did. I think I just kind of accepted that if I binge, I just binge. And then I'll get fat. And that's what I did, So I didn't really stop the cycle of shame completely because I still had a lot of shame about being a binge eater and cycling through gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, and losing weight. I guess I had watched enough after school specials or something that I was like, there's no way. I did not want to be a purger. I was just like, I can't do this to myself. So it just kind of tapered off. I think I just slowly stopped doing it. And then I just was fine with gaining weight, I guess. I guess I wasn't really fine with it, but I accepted that that was the reality. So it was like I eliminated some of the shame, but not all of the shame of being a binge eater. I just couldn't handle the shame of being bulimic. I was like, no, I'm not going to go down this road. So that one's like a little murky. I just remembered that, reflecting back on this, I was like, it took time actually, and it just kind of gradually tapered off to the point where I never, ever, it went from having this like physical urge to purge to no longer having that and no longer ever even thinking about it. Just got to a point where it was never even an option anymore. That it was like a gradual tapering off, such that I never remembered the last time. Like I didn't have like one big last hurrah. It just ended. And I can't even remember how I did it. So it just kind of showed me there is this element of time, and there is this element of like gradual dissipation. The second thing I thought of was quitting cigarettes. I smoked for, decades. I didn't really quit nicotine until I was about 41. And I started smoking when I was a teenager. And I would stop and start. I quit smoking cold turkey. I quit with nicotine patches, and I would become addicted to nicotine patches. And then I would just like quit and never smoke. And then I would start back up again if I ever had a breakup or a really bad day at work, or I was drinking too much and out with friends who smoked. Then I tried vaping, like right when vaping came out. I was like, this is a great replacement for smoking. And then I just became addicted to vaping. And actually, that was even harder to stop because I think the concentration of nicotine was so intense. Like I had no idea how much I was actually smoking. Because, with a cigarette, you're smoking a cigarette or 10 or 15 or 20 a day. But with the vaping, you really have no sense of how much you're taking in. So that was actually really hard to break. And I started taking like nicotine lozenges and gums as a way to break that habit. Because I was just like, I clearly need a lot of nicotine, right? And then I would just stop those tablets and then I would start them back up again until finally I'm with my current partner, and he was a former smoker. He found these tablets. He's like, what's up with these nicotine tablets? And I was like, ooh, I'm addicted to nicotine. And I take nicotine tablets now. And he was just like, oh, okay. Well, he was just sort of curious, and it wasn't any judgment or he wasn't disappointed in me. But he did say, I used to smoke a lot and I don't want to be with a smoker. And I was like, noted. It wasn't really directed at me. It was just like a very basic statement of like how he wishes to live his life. And I realized I don't want to be a smoker either. And I kind of had the same firm, clear, non-judgmental discussion with myself. Like, I really don't want this, so I'm not going to do it. And I remember telling myself, like, I'm going to crave it. It's going to be physically uncomfortable. I'm going to be irritable. It'll last intensely for a number of days. And then it will gradually, because I had quit so many times, I knew that it would gradually subside. What was actually remarkable about this very last time, and mind you, this is like after 20 years of starting and stopping, and I didn't have a hard time with it, and I didn't have a lot of cravings. I just kind of like went on with my life. It was sort of crazy. But every once in a while, like I would see somebody smoking in a movie or something, or smell somebody smoking like down the street, and I'd be like, oh, I used to love that. And I think I thought of the smoking example because just yesterday we were driving around with the windows open. Somebody in front of us was smoking a cigarette in their car, and I could smell it in our car. And it was so intense. I was just like, ugh, what an awful smell. And I just remember not that long ago, I would think things like, that smells so good. Or I wish I could smoke. Or the freedom of blowing it out the window while you drive. That's so exciting. I miss that. And I had none of it. So much like with the binging and purging habit change, I recognized my experience with smoking was, it took me a lot, trial and error. Like I quit a bunch of times, I quit in a bunch of different ways. My cravings changed. They were always there. And I kept just saying like, but no, like the first few days after you quit a nicotine product or smoking cigarettes, it's really intense. And then it gets to be like, oh, there's just this habit release. Like you miss just being able to simply take care of whatever problem you've got by smoking a cigarette. Then there's, maybe months later, you remember the nostalgia of it. Like, oh, how glamorous it is, to smoke a cigarette or be on vacation on the sea, like on the beachfront, and you're having a bottle of wine and you're smoking a cigarette. Like, oh, I love that. And then I just got to a point where I didn't have the physical cravings anymore. I didn't have the desire for quick releases anymore because I kind of like cut that. It just went away. And then I didn't even have the nostalgia for it anymore. And now it was just like I saw it for what it was, which is like something that I don't want to do and I find completely, at this point, revolting. But that said, I don't want to indulge in any kind of inhalation, exhalation thing, like no shishas or hookahs, even like smoking weed. I don't want to do that. I don't really smoke, but I just don't even enjoy the idea of it. So that example pointed to me like the mindset that I've had towards binge eating, emotional eating, and overeating is that I think I can't have another urge. Like I won't be able to handle it. So I have to do whatever I can to have no urges, and having an urge is a failure, and I have no choice but to indulge in the urge. I just kind of remembered about all the times that I quit smoking, and especially the last time, like urges are part of it. The cravings stay and they change. And it is a gradual tapering off. And who knows, maybe sometime in a number of years, I'll think like, oh, I could smoke a cigarette. But I've got this backlog of experience of just like, no, and it's just this fleeting thought. So I also know that I can't even say I'll never have another urge to smoke a cigarette, because maybe I will. But I also know like that I won't. So it just reminded me like, oh, I can do that. I can have an urge, and it's kind of part of the process. And I've been so afraid of the cravings and the urges that I can't control myself. And that's not true, and it's also not a sign of failure. Having an urge is part of the process. Like I kind of forget the addictive cycle of like the urge, and then reacting to and indulging in the urge is what keeps the habit, the addiction going, keeps it strong. And then the third thing that I have quit is I used to be really, really, really messy, like really messy. My house was always a wreck. My office was always a mess. The only time I would really clean up is if somebody was going to come over. And then it was so overwhelming that I would just shove a bunch of stuff into the closet and hope to God nobody opened a closet. Then immediately after somebody leaves, the mess returned. I was just chronically messy. I would get overwhelmed at the idea of changing. I didn't know how to change. I would read books and I would get so overwhelmed and nervous. It was such an impossibility that I wouldn't even be able to finish the book. And this was, I was just a messy person. I was just really messy. My family made fun of me about it. I was just messy. I couldn't organize things. It was just a constant state of like overwhelm with objects. I bought clothes I didn't really like. If I had decorative items, they were all out. So there's always like an abundance and a chaos and an overwhelm in my life. And that began to change when I started this Buddhist practice. And part of the Buddhist practice was creating atmospheres of uplift for yourself. Sort of using not necessarily the philosophy of Feng Shui, but the philosophy that you are a part of your environment and that you respond to your environment and that your environment can lift you up every single day and give you the means with which to conduct yourself with dignity and kindness towards yourself and others. So it's this philosophy that your environment and the food that you eat and the quality of your conversations and all these things kind of contribute to truly how you live your life. Over time, I started like walking in my house and being like, I would like to see something beautiful here. And it just started with, rearranging some furniture and then slowly, gradually realizing like, oh, I don't really like this anymore. And it doesn't have to be on display, and storing things, and then getting more into a habit of just making my bed before I left for the day. It just sort of built on itself. And I read a few books. I read Marie Kondo's book about sparking joy. And I was just like, I don't need to have all these things around. And there was a culmination of things. It was very gradual. Again, I didn't just like instantly become the tidiest, cleanest, most aesthetically gorgeous person. Even now, I keep up with it. I just know when things get to a state of like, this is a little too much. And I just do a little bit at a time, and it's not perfect, and I don't always make my bed. If I walk into my room and I don't have my bed made, I'm like, oh, this doesn't make me feel good. So then I make the bed. I changed my orientation from one of like shame and, oh, why can't I change this? And this is something that's awful about myself too. I want to create a different kind of environment. And I just stopped thinking of myself in terms of shame. Instead of walking into a messy room and being like, oh God, Amanda, you did it again. I would just think like, oh, I want to walk in this room and feel differently. So that was more shifting my like energetic approach to something. And again, it took a while. It wasn't an immediate thing. I had to learn stuff. I still like read articles on tidying and cleaning, but I don't have that stress that I used to have of like, I can't make it through this book, or oh, if I don't do this, this means I'm a terrible person. This is pointing out that I changed things by not viewing myself with shame, by not letting this habit have anything to do with the quality of my character or who I was as a person or anything like that. Like it had nothing to do with if I'm a good person or a bad person. It was simply that I wished to create a different kind of beautiful atmosphere around me. And I focused on the beautiful atmosphere part. And every time I did something small, I was like, ah, that is beautiful. And I would walk in and deliberately pay attention to what I had done that created a sense of uplift, even if the whole rest of the room was kind of a mess. It was gradual and it was like a training. And that just pointed out like, oh, okay, with this binge eating and this overeating and this emotional eating, like I have so much shame around it. And I can just start simply bringing in more of the like, I just want to enjoy food. I want to enjoy eating. I want to enjoy my company. And focusing on that more and more rather than like, I'm an awful person after I eat too much. I ate too much yesterday. We went to a restaurant and I ordered a hamburger with fries. I can't even remember the last time I would allow myself to eat a hamburger and fries. Just because it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. But I would still like binge eat French fries. It made no sense. And I ate too much and I felt very, very full. And yet I was like, gosh, that burger was really good. I haven't had a good burger. I'm so glad we went out to eat tonight. Like that was a lot of fun. I just started focusing on what I enjoyed about it and less emphasis on the like, oh, you did it again, Amanda. These are things that I'm reflecting on. Like, okay, I've changed before. I've changed major, entrenched, compulsive habits of binging and purging, smoking cigarettes and being addicted to nicotine, being a total mess, being such a messy person who didn't clean or tidy very regularly. And I've changed all of those. And they all took time. There were elements of focusing my attention on the positives rather than the negatives, and accepting that there is going to be discomfort and urges along the way. There's a process to it, and that's part of it, and it's okay. I can anticipate that. So I just wanted to share that. These are my thoughts. Feels pretty good.